Welcome to Love Will Love, a place where emotions meet stories. Here, we explore love, mystery, and the moments that change our lives forever. Every episode is a new journey. Are you ready to feel it? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and join us for the next story of Love Reborn. She met my parents before I even knew her name, and that chance encounter changed my life forever. It was move-in day at my new university, a campus so large, it felt like a city in its own right. The late summer sun beat down on thousands of students flooding the dormitories, each carrying boxes, bedding, and hopes for the year ahead. Excitement buzzed in the air, tempered by nerves freshman jitters, parents holding back tears or giving last-minute advice, all of us caught between anxiety and anticipation. In the midst of this whirlwind, I was busy setting up my new dorm room. I pinned up posters of my favorite bands and authors, arranged my books on the shelf, and tried to make this small, impersonal space feel like home. My parents had helped me carry the heavy stuff earlier, but once the essentials were in place, I shooed them off to rest while I tinkered with my room's layout. They found a quiet corner with a couple of chairs in the dorm lobby to catch their breath. My mom and dad looked a little out of their elements, surrounded by swarms of students and frantic parents. They sat there with kind, tired smiles. I remember glancing down from the mezzanine outside my room and seeing them. Dad fanning himself with a campus map, Mom sipping water, and people watching. It was a strange sight, my two worlds colliding. On one hand, the new independence of college. On the other, the familiar comfort of my parents, here to send me off. As I meticulously arranged my desk supplies upstairs, something unexpected was happening downstairs in the lobby. A girl someone I had never met noticed, my parents sitting alone. She was wandering through the dorm, a slight bounce in her step, her eyes bright with curiosity as she took in the bustling scene. Perhaps she had moved in earlier and was exploring, or maybe she was just passing through. Either way, when she saw my mom and dad resting in the corner, she approached them with a friendly smile. From what I later gathered, it started simply. The girl asked if they were here, helping someone move in. My mom likely jumped at the chance to talk. She's the chatty type. Yes, our son is a freshman, Mom would have said proudly, perhaps gesturing toward the elevators that led up to my floor. They introduced themselves, my mom and dad, sharing their names, and the girl responded in kind. That's how my parents met Emily, the girl who, unbeknownst to me at the time, would become an incredibly important part of my life. Emily was an English major, just like I was. When that little detail came up, it delighted my mom to no end. I can imagine the way Mom's face lit up upon hearing it. Her son hadn't even finished unpacking, and already she'd found him a potential friend who shared his field of study. According to my dad, the two of them chatted with Emily for a good 15 or 20 minutes. She was waiting for a friend who lived in the dorm, and she figured she'd say hello to the newcomers, my parents, while she waited. They talked about the university, the English department, and even a bit about literature. My dad later told me that within minutes of conversation, he was struck by how intelligent and witty she was. She had a sharp sense of humor that made my parents laugh, and a curiosity about the world that showed even in casual dorm lobby chit-chat. As my mom describes it, Emily had this warmth about her, like she could strike up a friendly conversation with just about anyone. It put my parents at ease immediately. Mom mentioned that I was an incoming English major, and Emily's eyes apparently lit up. She told them that she was starting her sophomore year in English literature. He has to take Professor Grant's Intro to British Lit. Then, Emily supposedly told them enthusiastically, Grant's an amazing lecturer. She went on to recommend a couple of her favorite classes and professors, giving my parents plenty of advice to pass on to me. They were thrilled. Here was this kind, thoughtful girl, practically a stranger, offering tips to help their son, purely out of friendliness. At one point, maybe to keep the conversation flowing, Dad asked Emily what made her choose English. She grinned and admitted she's been a bookworm her whole life, that nothing captivates her like a beautifully written story. When Dad recounted this to me later, he joked. I knew right then she had to meet you. You're just the same. They bonded a little over that. My mom told her how I used to stay up late reading novels in high school, flashlight under the covers and all. I'm sure I would have been embarrassed if I'd heard that in person, but knowing my mom, she loves telling cute little stories about me to anyone who will listen. Emily apparently found it endearing. She laughed and said she'd done the same as a kid, sneaking books after bedtime. Time flew down in that lobby. Eventually, I had finished setting up my room and figured I should find my parents to check if they needed anything. Oblivious to the fact that they were mid-conversation with someone, I headed for the lobby. I remember stepping out of the elevator and spotting my mom and dad, still seated in that corner. But now they weren't alone. Girl around my age stood with them, animatedly talking. I could only see her in profile at first. She had chestnut brown, hair pulled back in a ponytail, and was wearing a bright yellow sundress that stood out amid the sea of jeans and t-shirts around her. She gestured with her hands as she spoke, smiling often. My parents looked comfortable and happy, chatting away like they were old friends with this stranger. I paused for a moment, curious about who this could be. A resident assistant, maybe? Or a friendly upperclassman welcoming freshmen. It wasn't unheard of. Our university had volunteers to make new students feel at home. As I walked up, my mom noticed me and waved me over excitedly. Here he is, she said, her eyes practically sparkling. Before I knew it, I was being introduced. Honey, this is Emily, Mom said. Emily turned to face me fully, and for a second, I was caught off guard. She was striking not in an over-the-top way, but in the way someone's personality shines through their expression. Bright, clear eyes, a ready grin. There was a smudge of what looked like ink on the side of her hand. As a fellow constant note scribbler, I recognized the telltale sign of someone who'd been writing by hand recently. I said hello, and she immediately stuck out her hand to shake mine. Nice to meet you, she said with a friendly enthusiasm. I noticed a slight southern lilt in her accent that I hadn't picked up on from afar. I learned later she was from North Carolina originally. At that moment though, I was just a somewhat awkward freshman meeting a confident, talkative sophomore. I wasn't sure what to say. My parents, however, had no such hesitation. They jumped right in, telling me how Emily was also an English major and how she'd been graciously sharing advice on navigating the department. I gave a polite smile, still feeling a bit shy. Honestly, I was a little overwhelmed by move-in day emotions and meeting so many new people at once. I thanked her for helping my parents kill time and for the tips about classes. She laughed lightly and said, "Oh, no trouble at all. I remember how crazy my move-in day was last year. I figured your folks could use some friendly company while you were busy." I felt a wave of gratitude hearing that. Not everyone would take time out of their own day to chat with someone else's parents just to be nice. We spoke only briefly, maybe a couple of minutes, directly. She asked if I was excited for my first semester and if I had any idea what electives I might want to take. I mentioned I loved creative writing, and her face lit up. "You should join the creative writing club," she said. "I'm in it, and it's a blast. We meet Thursdays at the student union. If you're interested, I could introduce you to everyone." I remember nodding, saying that sounded great. In truth, I was genuinely interested. Though the prospect of walking into a club where I knew nobody except possibly this older student was a bit daunting. Still, her warmth made me think I'd at least see a familiar face there. Soon after, Emily's phone buzzed. It was the friend she'd been waiting for, finally arriving. She glanced at the screen and said, "Oh, I should run. I promised to help my friend unpack. It was so nice meeting you all." She directed the last part to my parents, and then to me added, "Maybe I'll see you around the English department, or at the creative writing club." I told her I'd keep an eye out. With that, she gave a little wave and walked off toward the entrance, where another girl was waving back at her eagerly. I watched Emily leave, her yellow dress bright against the drab dorm hallway, as she disappeared into the crowd. And just like that, this cheerful, kind stranger exited my life as quickly as she'd entered it. I had no idea at the time just how significant that brief meeting would become. In the immediate aftermath of that encounter, I remember standing there, slightly dazed. A part of me thought, wow, she was really cool. I was struck by how easily she'd connected with my parents, and how genuinely kind she had been to the man to me. In our brief introduction, she seemed like someone I could be great friends with, maybe more if life ever gave us the chance. But just as quickly as that thought came, it floated away. The chaos of Movin Day reclaimed my attention. I had more boxes to unpack and a whole new college life to navigate. So I simply filed the encounter away as a happy coincidence. I chuckled, a bit embarrassed, and said something non-committal like, yeah, she seems nice. I'm sure I'll run into her. My dad chimed in, smart girl. She really impressed your mom and me. Very well. I remember joking, all right, you too, I get it. Because they were both grinning at me like they'd just found my future wife or something. At that moment, it was all in good fun, just parents teasing their son. I certainly didn't anticipate anything more coming from it. We soon shifted back to the tasks at hand. There were still supplies to buy and lunch to eat before my parents would head home. The rest of move-in day blurred by. But I do recall that after my parents hugged me goodbye and started their drive back, I was alone in my dorm room that evening, and I found myself thinking about the day's events. University life was already off to a surprising start. In one afternoon, I'd met so many new people, roommates, orientation leaders, floor mates, and among them, one stood out, the girl named Emily who had met my parents first. It was a fleeting meeting, yet the coincidence of it all stuck with me. What were the odds? It felt almost like something out of a story. Boy goes off to college. Boy's parents randomly befriend a girl who happens to be just the kind of person he'd get along with. Still, I was 18 and focused on all the newness around me. Orientation events, welcome mixers, figuring out where my class's wit was overwhelming in the best and busiest way. So, in the days that immediately followed, I didn't actively go searching for Emily. I assumed if she were a sophomore in my major, maybe I'd see her in the halls of the English building, or at a club meeting if I got the courage to attend. The campus was enormous, though. Our English department alone had hundreds of students. The dorm she met my parents in housed around 800 people, with 2 towers and multiple floors. The chance of spontaneously running into her again felt slim, unless I made a real effort. In fact, I even went to a big welcome mixer for humanities students, thinking maybe I'd spot her there. It seemed like a reasonable plan if she was an English major. Perhaps she'd attend the department's meet and greet, or a club fair. I spent the evening scanning the bustling room, glancing at name tags when I could, trying to catch a glimpse of that friendly face or hear someone mention an English major named Emily. But it was no use. There were just too many people. I left that event a bit discouraged, realizing that finding one person on a campus this large was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Unless something or someone brought us together again, weeks or even months could pass without our paths ever crossing. And that's where my mom came in via text. Classes hadn't even begun when she started her gentle nagging. On my first night after they left, she texted, "Don't forget to check out that creative writing club. That girl, what was her name? Emily. She said they meet Thursdays." I rolled my eyes affectionately and replied, "Yes, Mom, I remember. I'll see how the first week goes." Honestly, I was both nervous and busy. Thursday came and went. I hadn't gone to the club, swamped with orientation events and just adjusting. Mom's next text read like a disappointed sigh. "Did you meet that girl from the dorm lobby yet? Dad and I keep talking about how sweet she was." I responded that campus was huge and we probably wouldn't just bump into each other so easily. But Mom was persistent. Nearly every other day, I'd get some message. "Any luck finding your English major friend? Maybe ask around in your classes." Or a teasing, "Still no sign of Miss Emily. You know, if she recommended Professor Grant, you should take that class." I'd usually just send back laughing emojis, or not yet, Mom, trying to keep it light. Part of me found it amusing that my parents were so invested in this. Part of me found it a touch embarrassing. I mean, I hadn't even spoken to Emily for more than a few minutes. For all we knew, we might not even click as friends if we actually hung out. My parents had a wonderful first impression, sure, but I didn't really know her. As week 1 turned into week 2, I got busy with actual classes. I met my professors, joined study groups, and even tried out a couple of club meetings, though, notably, not the creative writing club. At least not yet. Ty kept remembering the invitation, but chickened out at the last minute that first week. I made a few friends in the dorm, and in classes a couple of guys from down the hall, and one girl from my intro to psychology class who was also undecided and looking for study partners. My college life was filling up with activity and new acquaintances, and in the background, Mom's texts about Emily continued like a drumbeat. By the 3rd week of classes, I started teasing my mom that she was more interested in finding this mystery girl than I was. One night, after a club fair event, I called home and caught up with my parents on the phone. Right before we hung up, Mom couldn't resist asking, "Any sign of that girl? Have you met her again yet?" I sighed dramatically. "No, Mom. Like I said, it's a big campus. I'm not going to put up 'Have you seen this person?' posters." She laughed. "Well, maybe you should. Or at least ask your English professor if there's a sophomore named Emily in any of the student groups." Dad yelled in the background, jokingly, "Son, do we need to hire a private investigator?" I remember chuckling and assuring them that if fate wanted it, I'd meet her again. But privately, I was starting to wonder if my parents had a point. In a way, what if Emily and I really would be great friends or more? It was a romantic notion, something my imagination toyed with during quieter moments. In truth, after that lobby encounter, I occasionally found myself scanning faces in the dining hall or glancing at name tags at events, half wondering if any of those young women could be the Emily who met my parents. I realized I hadn't even known what she looked like until I saw her myself. Since initially, Mom was texting me about her without a description. After I met Emily briefly, though, I had a clear mental picture. The brown hair, the bright, friendly expression, her easy laughter. A couple of times I thought I spotted someone who resembled her on the quad or at the library, but I was always mistaken. One Sunday, I even went to the campus coffee shop, which was rumored to be a favorite hangout for literature and artsy types, thinking maybe I'd see her buried in a book there. No luck. It was almost comical. This girl wasn't hiding or anything. Yet she might as well have been a ghost in the crowd of students rushing from class to class. Meanwhile, the texts from Mom kept coming, though with a bit more humor. One read, "Dad says to tell you he'll disown you if you don't find that awesome girl," joking. Followed by, "But seriously, she might be the best friend you haven't met yet." I would shake my head with a smile and usually reply with something like, "If I run into her, I'll invite her for coffee, promise." Privately, I started to think that maybe I should make a more concerted effort. There was an undergraduate English Society meet and greet coming up. Perhaps she'd be there. That could be a natural place to look without seeming like a stalker roaming campus aimlessly. However, life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, exactly when you stop actively looking for something. One Thursday evening, around the start of the 4th week of the semester, my friend group decided to visit a local tea house that had quickly become popular with students. It wasn't your typical loud coffee shop. This place was cozy and quiet, known for exotic teas and a calm atmosphere perfect for conversation or studying. I had 2 close friends by that point who I hung out with regularly. Jason, a fellow freshman from my dorm who I'd bonded with over a mutual love of sci-fi novels, and Priya, a sophomore I'd met through the campus volunteering club. She had kind of taken a few of us freshmen under her wing to show us around. The 3 of us headed to the tea house together that evening, thinking we'd unwind after a long day of classes. The tea house had warm lighting, shelves of books and board games, and a mellow indie playlist in the background. We ordered drinks, lavender Earl Grey for me, iced chai for Priya, and some fruity bubble tea for Jason, and found a small table near the corner. Next to our table, just a couple feet away, was another group, 3 or 4 girls deep in animated discussion over their own tea and pastries. I remember catching snippets of their conversation as we sat down, something about a classic novel, maybe Jane Austen, because I distinctly heard one of them exclaim, "Mr. Darcy has nothing on modern guys, I swear," followed by laughter. Hearing that made me smile. As an English major, I found comfort in these familiar literary debates, even if they weren't my friends having them. We settled in, and for a while my friends and I chatted about our day. But then, in the middle of joking about one of our overly enthusiastic professors, Jason got a text from another friend, reminding him about a group project meeting for a history class. "Oh shoot," he muttered. "I totally forgot we were supposed to meet tonight to finish our presentation slides." He looked at Priya and me apologetically. "I'm so sorry, guys. I might have to bail." Priya checked her watch and sighed. "Actually, I forgot I promised my roommate I'd help her with something tonight too. She's been texting me." It was a bit disappointing that our relaxing tea night was getting cut short, but we all had academic commitments piling up. Within a couple of minutes, they had packed up their things. Jason squeezed my shoulder in that bro-ish goodbye way and said, "Catch you later, man. Sorry, we'll do a rain check on this," gesturing to the half-finished bubble tea. Priya gave a sympathetic half-smile and said, "I really should run too. You okay hanging here by yourself? You could join those girls next to us if you get bored," she added with a teasing wink. Eyeing the group nearby who were still engrossed in conversation, I waved them off. "I'll be fine. I might just read or people watch a bit. See ya." And just like that, my friends rushed out, off to their respective tasks, leaving me alone at the tea house. I took a slow sip of my Earl Grey and let out a small sigh, debating whether I should just finish my drink quickly and head back to the dorm, or stay a while to enjoy the ambiance. I decided there was no need to rush. I actually savored these quiet moments. Plus, the conversation at the next table was genuinely interesting to listen to. I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally, but in the quiet of the shop, it was impossible not to overhear bits and pieces. The group of girls were a couple of feet to my right. There were 4 of them, each with notebooks and a stack of books on the table, which made me think this might have started as a study session that morphed into casual chat. From their discussion, I gathered they were indeed talking literature. One with short blonde hair and glasses was passionately saying, "But that's the thing about Victorian literature. It reflects the social constraints of the era." Another, a girl in a green scarf, chimed in about how one character in the novel they mentioned was way ahead of her time. It dawned on me they might be English majors too, possibly even a study group, or just friends from a literature class. My earlier smile widened at that thought. Here I was, an English major by myself, adjacent to what sounded like my kind of people. It took serious willpower not to lean over and join in, uninvited as I was. I loved this stuff, debating literature, discussing fictional characters as if they were real people. Even as a silent bystander, I felt a sense of kinship with these girls, simply because of how passionately they spoke about the book. I kept my eyes politely on my book, a collection of short stories for my English 101 class. But I wasn't really reading. At one point, I heard one of the girls in that group say, "Emily, you've been awfully quiet. What do you think?" My ears perked up at that name. Emily. It could be a coincidence. Semele is a common name after all. I dared a quick side glance. The girl who responded had her back to me mostly, but I could see she had brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and was wearing a golden yellow cardigan. My heart skipped. Brown hair, a fondness for yellow tones. Could it possibly be the same Emily? Her voice answered, and I recognized that slight southern accent immediately. "Sorry, I was in my head for a second there," she said. I felt a jolt, and my stomach did a little flip. It was her. I was almost certain of it. What were the odds? After weeks of searching and keeping an eye out, Here I was literally sitting right next to the very person I had almost given up hope of finding. And she didn't even know I was there. Suddenly, I felt self-conscious. My mind raced. Should I say something? Just introduce myself. But what if she doesn't remember my parents or me? We spoke so briefly. Maybe I left zero impression. Or worse, what if she does remember but finds it odd that I just pop up out of nowhere? I could also ignore this, finish my tea, and walk away, and perhaps never have this chance again. The thought of my mom's constant texts popped into my head. She knew that right now I was 10 feet away from that girl. And considering not even saying hello, she'd probably materialize out of thin air to smack me upside the head. While I was deliberating, the conversation next to me carried on. Now that I knew it was indeed Emily, or at least 99% sure, I couldn't help but pay more attention. She shared her thoughts on the novel they discussed, speaking thoughtfully and with enthusiasm. The sound of her voice confirmed it for me. I remembered that warm, lively tone from the dorm lobby introduction. It was definitely her. My heart was pounding as I gathered up my courage. Before I could overthink any further, one of the girls from her group glanced my way and made eye contact. I must have looked strange, sitting alone with a book, but clearly distracted. She gave me a small, polite smile, which I returned awkwardly. That must have drawn the attention of the others, because next thing I knew, the girl with the green scarf gave a playful nudge to Emily. It was the kind of nudge friends give each other, in that, hey, check out that person over their way. I saw a green scarf girl whisper something quickly in Emily's ear. Emily straightened up and finally turned around to look in the direction her friend indicated directly at me. Our eyes met. There was a brief moment of confusion on her face, as if she was trying to place where she'd seen me. And then, in an instant, I saw the flash of recognition. She smiled wide and genuine. Wait a second. I know you, she said, sounding pleasantly surprised. This was already a better start than I could have hoped for. She actually remembered me, or at least my face. I smiled back, probably blushing at being the sudden focus of 4 inquisitive female gazes. Hi, I managed. I think we met on Movin Day. You talked to my parents. It came out like a question even though I knew it was her. As soon as I mentioned my parents, Emily's expression lit up even more. Oh my gosh, you're Michael, she exclaimed, remembering my name. Here was proof she remembered not only them but me, my name. I nodded, thrilled that she actually did recall. She leaned forward slightly. You're an English major, right? Your parents told me about you. I laughed in relief. Yep, that's me. And you're Emily. I said it as more of a statement than a question this time. That Emily my parents have been raving about ever since move-in day. I couldn't help but grin. At that, she actually blushed a little and laughed. They were so sweet. I was hoping I'd run into you at some point. I remember thinking how funny it was that I met your folks and not you. She motioned to the empty seat at their table. Do you want to join us? Before the invite was fully out of her mouth, the other girls were already scooting to make room and welcoming me with smiles. My shyness melted almost instantly as I moved over to their table. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude, I said, suddenly aware that they were likely in the middle of a book discussion or study session. Not at all, said the girl with the glasses. She extended her hand. I'm Kara. I shook her hand and then met the others. Green scarf girl introduced herself as Naomi. And the fourth girl, who had been mostly quietly observing, gave a shy wave and said, I'm Taylor. It turned out all 4 of them were in a Victorian lit class together, which explained the Austen debate I overheard. Emily turned to me as I settled in between her and Kara. So how have your first weeks been, Michael? She asked, her eyes warm with genuine interest. We were effectively strangers, yet thanks to my parents, it felt oddly like I was reconnecting with an old friend. I told them a bit about how overwhelming yet exciting college had been so far. I mentioned some of the classes I was taking, and as soon as I said I had English 101, Emily lit up. With Professor Allen, right? I had him last year. "He's great, but watch out, he's a tough grader on essays." That launched us into a conversation about Professor Scara, and Naomi groaned in unison at the mention of a notoriously difficult Shakespeare professor they had, which made us all laugh. The initial nervousness I felt was gone, replaced by an easy camaraderie. Eventually, the other girls steered back to their study session, as they did have to discuss an upcoming assignment. I offered to leave them to it, but they insisted I stay. Instead, I became part of their circle. It turned out to be a mini study group. They were reviewing themes from Pride and Prejudice for a paper. Being an unabashed literature nerd, I was happy to chime in. We spent another hour in that tea house, our books open in front of us, though by then we were mostly talking instead of studying. The conversation wandered freely from classwork to personal stories and back again. At one point, Naomi had us all in stitches with a tale of how she once accidentally emailed a rough draft of a short story meant for a creative writing forum to her Victorian Lit professor instead of her essay. She caught the mistake within minutes and prayed the professor hadn't checked his inbox yet. Kara shared that she only fell in love with literature after a certain high school teacher's passion for Shakespeare rubbed off on her. We teased her that now she was the one enthusiastically schooling us on Victorian novels. One minute we'd be analyzing themes in Austen, and the next we were trading funny life stories, as if we'd all been friends for years. I learned that Kara was an English major too, senior year. Naomi was actually a history major, but loved lit classes, and Taylor was in comparative literature. It felt so good to be surrounded by people who cared about the same kinds of things I did. And of course, I learned more about Emily. Between group banter, she and I sometimes branched off into our own side chat. She asked if I had joined the creative writing club yet. I sheepishly admitted I hadn't worked up the nerve. "Well, the invite still stands," she smiled. "If you come next week, I'll introduce you around, and it'll be less intimidating. Promise." We also discovered we had a shared favorite author. Turns out we both adored the short stories of Raymond Carver, something I wouldn't have guessed, since most people our age hadn't even heard of him. Her eyes lit up when I mentioned Carver, and we launched into a spirited exchange about our favorite stories of his, completely geeking out while the others rolled their eyes good-naturedly at our literary fervor. By the time we all started packing up our books and noting the late hour, it felt like I'd known these people for much longer than just an evening. As we walked out of the tea house as a group, the autumn night air had a slight chill. I remember Emily shivered in her thin cardigan, and without even thinking, I offered her my jacket. It was that clitched, gentlemanly instinct, perhaps, but it just felt natural. She initially protested, but I draped it over her shoulders with a smile, and she accepted gratefully. The look she gave me in that moment made my heart skip. There was a hint of something new in her eyes, a recognition that there was a spark between us. We all headed back toward the dorm area, since, coincidentally, we realized Emily still lived in the same large dorm complex as me, just the opposite tower. On the way, we split off gradually. First, Naomi peeled away to catch a bus to her off-campus apartment. Then, Kara, who lived in a nearby dorm, waved goodbye. That left Emily, Taylor, and me walking the last couple of blocks under the campus street lamps. Taylor soon spotted her boyfriend waiting for her by the fountain. She gave us a quick wave and ran off with a playful "see you in class," which left just Emily and me. I couldn't believe my luck. Here I was, strolling through campus alone with the very person I had been thinking about for weeks. The golden glow from the lamps lit her face as we walked, and for a moment I was very aware of how my heart was beating a bit faster. But our conversation stayed easy and friendly. We talked about where we grew up. She was indeed from North Carolina, as I guessed, and I was from a small town in upstate New York. We laughed about the culture shock of coming to such a big university from quieter places. Finally, we reached the point where our paths diverged. The entrance where I'd go left, toward my dorm tower, and she'd go right toward hers. I didn't want the night to end on just a casual see you later, when this moment felt anything but casual to me. So I gathered my courage once more. Finally, we reached the point where our paths diverged. The entrance where I'd go left, toward my dorm tower, and she'd go right toward hers. I didn't want the night to end on just a casual see you later, when this moment felt anything but casual to me. So I gathered my courage once more. "Hey Emily," I said, as she slipped off my jacket to hand it back. "Would you maybe want to hang out sometime? Like, outside of a study group. I mean, maybe grab lunch or coffee on campus." Even in the dim light, I saw a smile brighten her face. "I'd love to," she replied without hesitation. She then laughed, a cheerful, melodic sound. "You know, I was actually going to suggest the same, but you beat me to it." We exchanged phone numbers right then and there. Both of us perhaps a little giddy that this connection, whatever it was, turning into had finally been made. As I walked the rest of the way to my dorm that night, I felt like I was practically floating. The moon was high. Campus was quieter now, with most students in their rooms or the library. And here I was grinning like an idiot at my phone screen, where a new contact Emily English major was saved. The girl who met my parents before she met me was now saved in my phone, texting me, "It was great running into you. See you soon." As I climbed the stairs, when I got back to my room, my roommate was out, and I had a moment to just flop onto my bed and reflect. What an unbelievable series of coincidences had led to this. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been putting off. I texted my mom. Finally, with the news she'd been dying to hear. "Mom, you won't believe this. I met the girl from Movende. Her name's Emily, and yes, she's every bit as great as you said." She must have been awake still, because the reply came 2 minutes later, complete with a flurry of exclamation marks. "Oh my God, I'm so happy. Tell me everything." Dad is grinning ear to ear. I laughed to myself, and spent the next 15 minutes texting her a summary of the evening, leaving out perhaps how the jacket moment made my heart race and no need to give my mom more to get excited about just yet. It didn't take long at all for Emily and me to meet up again. In fact, 2 days later on Saturday, we decided to get lunch at a popular sandwich place off campus. I think both of us were equally eager. There was no pretense of waiting some cool amount of time. It just felt natural to want to hang out again immediately. That lunch turned into an hours-long hangout. We walked around the little downtown area after eating, exploring quirky shops, and talking about everything from our favorite books, no surprise. We had a lot of overlap in taste to our families. I learned that she was an only child like me, and that she missed her parents but talked to them often. She asked about my family, and I found myself telling her funny stories about Mom's text crusade to get us to meet. Emily was tickled by that. "Your mom knew what was up," she said teasingly. I'm glad she didn't let up. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern of seeing each other more and more. It started out with casual things. She did get me to go to the Creative Writing Club meeting that next Thursday. True to her word, she introduced me around until I felt perfectly at ease. We spent that evening writing silly short stories as a group, and then sharing them. She was right, it was a blast. After the meeting, a bunch of us, including a very happy Emily and a much more relaxed me, went out for late-night pancakes, where she and I ended up sharing a plate because I wasn't hungry enough for a full one, and she insisted. She just wanted a bite, then ate, half laughing at herself the whole time for being such a pancake fiend. By mid-semester, it was almost a daily routine to see each other, or at least talk. We'd grab coffee between classes on days our schedules aligned, or study together in the library. Sometimes we'd sit on the quadan, those still warm early fall days, reading our assignments side by side under a tree, occasionally forgetting the reading entirely, and just talking about random life stuff. Conversations with Emily flowed effortlessly. Her wit and insight made every discussion fascinating. Whether we were debating the ending of a novel or discussing hopes and plans for the future. As our friendship grew, it became clear there was something more blossoming between us. There was a subtle shift, a certain warmth in the way she'd hold my gaze a second longer than necessary, or how I'd find excuses to playfully bump her shoulder if we walked close together. After our impromptu campus hangouts, we started planning more intentional outings, heading to the City Museum one weekend, seeing a film at the campus cinema club, attending a fall festival carnival that the student union organized, where I won her a stuffed panda at a ring toss booth, much to both our delight and surprise. One evening, a couple of months after that chance tea house meeting, Emily and I decided to have a low-key movie night. She brought her laptop to my dorm room and we binge-watched a few episodes of an old sitcom we both loved, and then put on a classic romantic comedy, one neither of us would readily admit to our more cynical classmates that we adored. Halfway through the movie, during a particularly sappy scene, I glanced over to make a witty comment only to find she wasn't watching the movie at all. Instead, she was looking at me, a soft smile on her face. That's when I realized just how close we were sitting. My heart did that now familiar flutter. I smiled back, and without thinking too much about it, I leaned in and kissed her softly. It was gentle and unsure for maybe half a second, like an unspoken question. But then she kissed me back, and in that moment, everything felt right. When we pulled back, both a bit bashful and grinning like idiots, she joked softly, "Finally." We both laughed, and she added, "I was wondering when one of us would have the guts to do that." I admitted that I'd been wanting to for a while, and she playfully punched my arm, saying, "Me too, you dummy." There was no awkwardness, just relief and happiness that we were on the same page. So that's how we officially started dating. It felt like the most natural progression in the world. One day, we were best friends and making. The next, we were holding hands on the way to class, and saving seats for each other in the dining hall. In those early days of officially dating, we made a lot of little memories. Once, I attempted to cook her a surprise dinner in the dorm's communal kitchen. I figured a homemade pasta meal would impress her. Instead, I nearly burned the garlic bread and we set off the smoke alarm, causing us and a bemused RA to fan towels under the detector until it stopped blaring. We ended up laughing it off and ordering pizza, which we ate cuddled up in the common room while joking that takeout was our true culinary destiny. On another occasion, when I came down with a terrible cold right before midterms, she showed up at my door armed with homemade soup, cold medicine, and my favorite lemon ginger tea. She curled up next to me, making sure I was warm and even quizzing me gently on class notes when I felt up for it. I was amazed at how caring she was. With her there, being sick wasn't so bad. We found that we balanced each other out when one of us was overwhelmed or down. The other knew just how to lift spirits and provide comfort. Some of our mutual friends teased that they saw it coming a mile away. Apparently, we weren't as subtle as we thought, with our stolen glances and the way we gravitated to each other at group events. For all the fun and excitement, our relationship also found depth in quieter moments. I clearly remember the night I first said I love you to her. A few weeks into our official relationship, we were taking a late-night walk back from the library under a sky full of stars. We stopped by a quiet bench, talking in hushed voices about everything and nothing. My heart felt like it might burst, and before I could overthink it, the words slipped out. "I love you, Emily." I felt her squeeze my hand, and when I met her eyes, she was glowing. "I love you too," she whispered back, without a hint of hesitation. I can't even describe the joy of that moment, knowing we had fallen in love with each other, and having it said aloud. It was simple and perfect, and it made me feel like the luckiest guy on campus. And yes, my parents were thrilled beyond words. I think telling my mom that, "Hey, remember that girl from Oven Day? She's my girlfriend now," might rank as one of her all-time happiest moments. She jokingly demanded a written thank you from each of us for her matchmaking, to which Emily graciously mailed a cute thank you card home, endearing herself to my mom forever. A few months into our relationship, during the spring semester, my parents came to campus for the university's family weekend. It was the first time they'd seen me since winter break, and the first time seeing Emily since that lobby encounter only now. She wasn't a stranger anymore. We got there a few minutes early and stood outside under the restaurant's warm, glowing sign. Emily wore a pretty floral dress and looked equal parts excited and nervous. She kept smoothing a stray strand of hair and gently swinging our joined hands. "Do you think they'll like me, as your girlfriend?" she asked softly. I smiled and squeezed her hand. "They already adore you," I assured her. "Trust me, they've been your biggest fans since day one." She laughed, a bit more relaxed, just as I spotted my mom and dad coming down the sidewalk. In that moment, I realized I was as nervous as she was, but also incredibly happy. My mom practically squealed, "Of course we remember Emily," and immediately pulled her into a hug. My dad, with a huge grin, shook her hand and then gave me a sly thumbs up behind her back, which made me stifle a laugh. At the dinner table, conversation flowed easily. My parents asked about our classes and campus life, though of course they had a not-so-hidden agenda to learn more about this romance. After we'd ordered appetizers, my dad leaned forward with a playful glint in his eye. "So," he began casually, "you two are officially together now, huh?" He raised an eyebrow and gave a little wink. I felt myself blush, but I was grinning. Under the table, I gave Emily's hand a squeeze. "Yes, we are," I said proudly. Emily, cheeks pink, nodded in agreement. My mom practically bounced in her seat, clapping her hands softly. "We knew it," she gushed. "Didn't I tell you, honey?" she said to my dad. I knew they'd hit it off. Emily laughed, looking both bashful and delighted. "I guess I should thank you both," she said to my parents. "If you hadn't been so friendly to me that day, I might never have met Michael at all." Mom waved her hand as if to dismiss the thought, though she looked very pleased. "All I did was chat with you in the lobby," she said warmly. "You two did the rest yourselves." As the night went on, we recounted to them the whole story of our reunion at the tea house, filling in all the little details they hadn't heard yet. I told them how I ended up alone that evening with a group of girls nearby, and Emily described how her friend practically shelved her to talk to me. When I mentioned how my buddies abruptly ran off, leaving me solo, Emily shook her head in mock reprimand. "Those two friends of yours," she said, chuckling, "remind me to thank them for ditching you. Otherwise, who knows if we'd be here now." We all laughed, recognizing how lucky that twist of events had been. By the time our entrees arrived, piping hot pasta and rich sauce filling, the air with the delicious aroma we'd talked and laughed through every course. At one point, my mom reached over to pat my hand, her eyes a bit misty. "Seeing you both like this just makes me so happy," she said softly. My dad raised his glass and declared, "To chance meetings and new love." The rest of us lifted our glasses high. "To chance meetings," we echoed, clinking them together. It was a heartfelt toast that might have been a little cheesy, but none of us cared. My parents and Emily's parents have since met as well, and under the most joyous of circumstances. On graduation day, both families sat side by side in the audience, trading stories and laughter as they waited for our names to be called. By the end of the ceremony, our moms were hugging each other and wiping happy tears like they'd been friends for years. That evening, at a celebratory dinner, Emily's mom told me with a grin that she'd heard about my mom and dad long before we ever became a couple apparently. After that move-in day chat, Emily had called home to gush about the lovely couple she met in the dorm lobby and their son, who she hoped to meet someday. I had a feeling it was more than a chance meeting, her mom said, eyes twinkling. My dad chuckled and replied, "Looks like you were right." It was amazing to realize both our families had been cheering this on even before we fully realized what was happening. Time flew by, and our college years continued with us side by side. From late-night study sessions to road trips during spring break, from stressing over finals to dancing together at dorm parties, we became inseparable. Sure, we had our little disagreement, as every couple does. Maybe I forgot to meet her at the library once, and she waited, annoyed. or she canceled a date last minute when an important assignment came up, but we learned to communicate, and those moments never clouded over the fundamental ease and affection between us. By a senior year, we were still going strong, and that story of how we met had become our favorite to share. Friends would ask, "So how did you two meet?" And Emily or I would launch into the tale. Funny thing, she actually met my parents before she met me, which always got amused reactions and an "aw, that's so cute, it's like fate" sort of comment. We never got tired of telling it. In fact, each time we told it, I think we fell in love with each other all over again, feeling just how special and almost unbelievable our journey was. Looking back now, it does feel a bit like a fairy tale, albeit a modern, college rom-com version. Who would have thought a random act of kindness on Move-In Day would bring me the love of my life? My mom likes to joke that she and my dad should get credit for matchmaking, but honestly, none of us planned any of this. It was, as I often reflect, serendipity at its finest. Sometimes, I think about how easily we could have missed each other. If Emily hadn't stopped to chat with my parents that day, she would have just been another face in the crowd to me, and I to her. If my friends hadn't left me alone that night, or if I'd decided to head home instead of staying a bit longer, we might have continued to unknowingly orbit each other on campus, without ever colliding. But it's as if the universe nudged us together in the most unexpected ways, first through my parents and then through sheer coincidence at a tea shop. Or was it coincidence? Emily likes to tease me that it was meant to happen one way or another, because after that first meeting, she had also been keeping an eye out for the guy whose parents I met. In fact, she later admitted that she had gone to a couple of freshman mixers at the dorm, deliberately hoping to bump into me. But since we didn't know what each other looked like, those attempts were in vain. When she heard my name at the tea house and saw my face, something clicked for her too. Now, years later, we're still together, stronger than ever. We often visit that same tea house on our anniversary of meeting, sipping the same drinks we had that night, and laughing about how awkward and oblivious I was at first. And each time we do, I make sure to thank Jason and Priya for ditching me. I haven't already thanked them a million times, because their poorly timed departures were actually perfectly timed for me and Emily. My parents and Emily's parents eventually met too. They finally got to all sit down together at our graduation, where both families cheered us on proudly from the audience. Our moms actually found themselves hugging and crying happy tears together, like old friends by the end of the ceremony. Over dinner that evening, Emily's mom told me that she'd heard about my parents long before we ever met that back on Move-In Day. Emily had called home to gush about the lovely couple she'd chatted with in the dorm lobby. I had a feeling something was special about that, her mom confessed with a warm smile. My dad responded with a chuckle, and she was absolutely right. It felt amazing to realize that both of our families had been rooting for this relationship before we kids even knew it was a possibility. I think back on the journey from that chaotic move-in day to where we are now with profound gratitude. What started as a chance encounter between my parents and a kind stranger in a dorm lobby turned into the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It's a story we'll be telling for the rest of our lives, how a simple act of friendliness led to love. In fact, someday in the future, we'll sit our children down and tell them the unbelievable tale of how their mother met their grandparents, even before meeting their father. I have a feeling they'll think we're making it up, but it's 100% true. Happily ever after. She met my parents before I even knew her. And because of that serendipitous beginning, I got to meet the woman who would change my life. We both learned that sometimes the best things in life happen when you least expect them. I'll always be thankful for the day a stranger decided to talk to my mom and dad, because that stranger turned out to be the love of my life. Sometimes, fate really does work in mysterious ways. If you ask us, it felt like the universe had a plan all along. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Love has many faces. Which one will we discover next?